So I want to make a little video talking about my philosophy on keybinds and action bars. Even though that's all personal preference, I still do think there is the most efficient way to do things um, versus, having unconventional keybinds. So I wanted to kind of talk about how I have my stuff set up and how I did it. So if you look down below at my action bars, first of all, this is an add-on called zarmods, previously known as ZarUI. I like to use it because it allows me to set up my bars to look really clean. It now has a function where you can hide your keybinds and hide your macro names. So of course, I've been playing Mage for many, many years, so I have all my keybinds memorized in the back of my head. I don't even really need to think about it. It's all kind of just like second nature. I could pretty much like put a blindfold on and press all my buttons correctly on a target dummy and do my rotation perfectly. So there's no reason for me to have my keybinds. It kind of just makes it look cleaner. And also another thing you might notice if you look very closely is that it's actually missing a lot of spells. So sometimes people will come to my stream and be like, wow, mages have not that many keybinds. But I actually do not track certain spells that don't have cooldowns. For example, Polymorph, Pyroblast, Fireball, Flame Strike, Scorch. Those are just a few of the abilities that I don't have on my main action bar. Actually, I have them hidden on my separate action bars. So you'll also notice I have multiple of the same icons, like Remove Curse, for example. I have Remove Curse for myself, my teammates. And then for like Counterspell, I have regular Counterspell, Focus Counterspell, and Counterspell 1, 2, 3. Same with Polymorph. I have Poly 1, 2, 3 and Focus Poly, Spellsteal 1, 2, 3, Focus Spellsteal. Just so it's easier to control things in the arena. Not that you need 1, 2, 3 macros, that's just my preference. But yeah, a lot of people have their action bars enabled just like this, like fully. But I just feel like it's unnecessary clutter if you do set up your action bars the way I have it set up. So if you look at my shifting power ability in the bottom left corner, that's my Nightfake Covenant ability. That's not actually my shifting power. As you see, if I'm spamming that button, which is my number 4 on the keyboard, it's actually my Fireball. Also, if you look at my Spellsteal icon here, which usually has a cooldown if I'm running Kleptomania PvP talent, that's actually my Pyroblast as well. If you look at my Time Warp, that's my Scorch. And I do this by making show tooltip macros, just like this one right here. Once again, this allows me to change the icon of cooldowns or abilities that don't have cooldowns to abilities that do, ultimately just saving more action bar space. This allows me to have a really clean UI and gives me more space for other things like arena frames, cast bars, cooldown trackers, and weak auras. I personally think this is a really clean and sleek modern look. I personally, because I have all my keybinds memorized, I don't think it's necessary to have all those action bars enabled. Instead, I just use them as a way to hide abilities I don't need to see. Another thing you might notice by looking at my action bars is I actually have them grouped up for specific purposes. This allows me to quickly glance at a specific spot and get exactly all the information I need. So, for example, in this bottom left corner, I have my 2 Covenant abilities. And then mostly the left side of my action bar is more offensive, damaging abilities. Like I got my Fire Blast, Phoenix Flames. Usually my Meteor would go here if I'm running Meteor. I got my Combust, and then I have Ring of Frost as well, which I use to set up a lot of goes. So this is kind of like my offensive side, and then on the right side it's a little more towards the defensive. I have my shields, my Battle Masters, my Mirror Image, which is like my mini wall 20% dam reduc. Alter is generally used defensively. Same with my trinket. I do offensively trinket sometimes, but usually that's like a defensive ice block. I like to keep them together for specific nuanced situations. So for example, I have DB and CS together because those are my stops. For example, if a warlock is casting like Chaos Bolt on me, I can just look in this general area and I'll know if I can stop it or not. Like, see, if I don't have Counterspell, oh, at least I have DB. Also, shimmer's very close to it. A lot of times I shimmer DB to go for CC, so having them right beside each other allows me to know, it allows me to quickly process what I need in that situation. I like to have my Kleptomania, Spellsteal, and CS right beside each other as well if I'm trying to Klepto CS a Divine Favor, for example. In the past, I used to have Spellsteal on one side of my action bar and Counterspell on the other. So it would take me an extra like 0.2, 0.3 seconds to figure out if I can Klepto CS this cast. But by then, it'd be too late because the cast has gone off already. So tying certain abilities like this together is, I find, really important for very high stress situations. A lot of times defensively, I'm trinketing and altering high HP. And then running away and altering back. Also, obviously, you know, when I'm combusting I'm doing damage, I'm looking at my Fire Blast and Phoenix Flame stacks and my Meteor cooldown. And then I have Rune of Power right beside it because it's my secondary way of bursting outside of combust. So hopefully this makes sense. I have things grouped together because I actually save like milliseconds here and there. And I can then, in return, keep my awareness on a bunch of other things like positioning, cast bars, DRs, and all that stuff. If I didn't have it set up like this, I'd have to be staring at my action bars way more, which is kind of like a waste of time. So now that you understand my basic philosophy on how I like to set up my action bars and how I change the icons with macros, I'll go into explaining my keybinds a little bit. So for the gear I use, for my keyboard, I use a KeyCool 84 key Cherry MX Red. This is an 75% keyboard, so it's a little bit compact. What I like about this is it actually has the F keys directly above the number keys. A lot of keyboards don't have it set this way. It's kind of like higher up at an angle, but this is directly above, which allows me to bind spells to the F keys and easily access them. And for my mouse, I like to use an MMO mouse. I've used many MMO mice in the past, but I've actually recently landed on the Razer Naga X, which is their most recent model. It is the lightest 12-button mouse on the market, and it also has skates at the bottom of it, allowing me to slide very smoothly and quickly. I've found that it's easier to kill war banners and grounding totems with this mouse, and yeah, it just feels really nice. So first things first, on my keyboard, my movement keys are Q, W, and E. So I strafe with left with Q, right with E, and move forward with W. And I also move with my mouse as well. I just double click both buttons on my mouse, left and right, and I move forward too. This is really useful for like aiming and landing DBs. So since my fingers are usually on Q, W, and E, I like to bind, you know, all my spells around that. So just to start off, I have my main damage dealing rotation abilities on 1 to 5. This makes it really easy because it's very close to my movement keys, so there's no issue reaching these. Generally, if I'm bursting, I'm spamming 2 and 5, and then I spam 4 as my filler, and then I press 3 for my Dragon's Breath. That's like your main CC as a Fire Mage, and I really like it on 3 because I can tap it with my middle finger while still keeping my index finger and ring finger on my strafe. So that allows me to have full movement in my character and also hit my DBs. So I can move left and right with index and ring, and then move forward with my mouse, holding down both buttons, and then press 3 with my middle finger. So I have access to all my movement keys while DBing at the same time. Next up, for the F keys, I use F1 to F5. I feel like anything further past that is a little bit of a stretch. But yeah, for these abilities, they're still very often used spells, but slightly less because they either have a slightly longer cooldown or are more situational. I like having Shimmer on F2 as well for the same reason I have DB on 3. I can reach for F2 with my middle finger and also strafe at the same time, so I have access to full movement while I'm blinking. I actually usually don't talent into Meteor that much in the arenas, so F3 doesn't get used that often. But if I am playing a Blink Stun or Blast Wave talent versus like RMP, I rebind F3 to Blast Wave. And then Flame Strike is nice for stopping drinks behind pillars and stuff, of course, with Hot Streak procs. And then F5 is my poly, but I actually don't use this for poly often unless I'm doing duels or battlegrounds. I usually just use my poly 1, 2, 3 macros in arena. So for the rest of the keys, I don't have every single thing bound, but you'll notice that ASD is unbound from my movement. So I don't have keyboard turning or backpedaling enabled. In retail PvP, keyboard turning and backpedaling is pretty useless. I've seen some players, like some rank 1 players like Waz, utilize backpedal to like maintain sticking on their target. But he's more of a melee player. I feel like as a caster especially, backpedaling, I don't really see a use for it, so I unbind it. I know in like classic WoW, there's more of a purpose for it because of like the spell batching. Like when I used to play classic a little and I used to AoE grind, backpedaling came in handy. But yeah, as a caster in PvP on retail, you don't really need it, so I just bind it to other stuff. You can just take a look. Those are my binds. This is without any modifiers. So this is just my my basic keybinds here. So next up, I'm going to go over my shift modifiers. So as you can see here, these are the abilities that require me to hold shift down to activate. The abilities that I like to put on the shift modifiers are mid to long range cooldowns. These are abilities I'll be using in very specific situations. Usually spells that are generally 45 seconds or longer, with the exception of Blazing Barrier, that's a shorter cooldown. But this way I'm not having to constantly press shift during micro events and during the game. So shift Q, I have combustion. Shift Q has generally just been my go-to major offensive cooldown. So I just tap shift Q and then spam 2 and 5 for Fire Blast, Pyro Blast, and then 1 as well for my Phoenix Flames if I'm doing like a PvE rotation. And then I have shift W for alter time, shift E for shifting power, and then shift R for my living bomb. My regular R is normal living bomb, but my shift R is my focus living bomb. This is a great way to stop re-stealths against like resto druids or rogues, for example. So you don't have to actually waste Fire Blast or Phoenix Flame stack just to stop a re-stealth. You can also change this to a mouse over macro if you don't want it to be a focus. Then Shift A for Time Warp, Shift S for Blazing Barrier, and Shift D for Ring of Frost. And then I have a Shift X is usually like a quick defensive cooldown. I like to use this for BM across all my characters and all the classes I play. And then Shift C for Remove Curse. Actually, Shift C is Remove Curse 1, so I have that bound to dispelling my healer. Alt C is this Remove Curse 2, so I have that to dispel my DPS partner. And then Control C is to dispel myself or the target I'm targeting. So Shift C, Control C, and Alt C for all 3 of my Remove Curse. Oh yeah, also I like to use Shift 1, 2, 3 to shuffle through my action pages. This is really nice for like out of combat stuff and certain stuff in combat too. Like I have my engineering belt, my nitro boosts, my goblin glider, health pots, int pots, my portals, my transmog mount, bandages, and also my food. So I can just like press shift 2 and then start eating. So yeah, that's kind of like really nice to have access to without having to have all these other action pages or action bars enabled at all times. Next up, I do use alt modifiers, but this is just for targeting and set focus. So alt Q, W, and E is target 1, 2, 3 in the arena, so I don't have to click, and alt ASD is set focus 1, 2, 3. So you might be wondering if the alt Q, W, E interferes with my movement keys because that's my strafing and moving forward, but honestly it really doesn't at all. If I'm pressing like Alt Q, for example, I'm just tapping it. It's literally, I'm just tapping it for less than half a second just to change my target. So it doesn't bother me at all. And if I do have to be moving forward during that moment, I'm just moving forward by holding both my mouse buttons down anyways. So that works fine for me. I've been using these binds, these targeting binds since like MOP 2014. So it's just something I'm really used to. Alright, next up I'm going to talk a little bit about my mouse binds. So, of course, I'm not going to go over every single bind in the game for you. I'm not going to be like, okay, this is my character panel, this is my honor talents. Like, I'm not going to be like that. I'm just going to go over kind of like the crucial stuff that I feel like matters. So, for the 12-button mouse, I I like to add things to my 12 button mouse that split the workload. So I've noticed some people like to bind their actual damage rotation into their mouse button, but I feel like that's not as efficient. For me personally, I find it much easier to spam buttons on the keyboard with my left hand rather than spamming buttons with my thumb on the right hand. If there was like a test I could do where like I could see how many actions per minute I do from spamming on the left hand versus right hand, I swear it'd be like much higher on the left hand. Just using the thumb to spam stuff just feels kind of like awkward for me, which is why I like to have things that aren't usually as spammy on my 12 button mouse. So here I actually have my counterspell 1, 2, 3 on the first row. So from the 1, it's like the bottom, literally 1 on the arena, and then all the way up to 3, which is like at the highest. This is really nice because say I'm combusting and doing my full damage rotation on the kill target, and then like hybrid healing is really insane right now, right? So let's say I sheep the healer, I'm bursting on the kill target, but then like the off target, it's like enhanced Sham or something that's, or like Ellie Sham that's about to spam healing surges. I can just have my thumb on Razor Naga button 2 while doing my burst rotation with my left hand and be ready to like insta CS it, or even late CS, whatever. So this allows me to counterspell things while not having them targeted or on focus, and doesn't take anything away from my movement and damage rotation because it's on the different hand. I also have polymorph 1, 2, 3 down to my 7, 8, 9 on my Naga. I actually remap these keys to buttons on the keyboard that I don't use. So like F6 to F12, delete, home, page up, page down, equal sign, minus, like stuff like that. Things I don't use, I remap it to, and then that's how I get those extra binds. I then have in the middle row for 4, 5, and 6, I have regular counterspell, regular scorch, and then regular spell steal. And on top of that, I actually have shift modifiers for this. The 1, 2, 3 at the top for CS 1, 2, 3. If shift is pressed, it's spell steal 1, 2, 3, and then focus CS, focus poly, and focus spell steal. I also play a Shadow Priest right now. If you guys don't know, I'm attempting to push rank 1 on a Shadow Priest, and as you'd imagine, I have everything pretty similar. For where the CS 1, 2, 3 is, it's actually Silence 1, 2, 3. Then I have regular Silence, Shadow Word Death, then Purge, and then with shift modifier, I have Purge 1, 2, 3 as well. And then where my poly 1, 2, 3 is actually MC 1, 2, 3 for the spammable CC. And if I was to play like a Boomy or a Warlock, then I'd probably have Clone 1, 2, 3 and Fear 1, 2, 3 there too. Alright, so that's basically my philosophy on how I like to bind things and set up my action bars. Like I said earlier, I'm always looking to improve the efficiency of my setup. So if you guys have any interesting ways or interesting, perspectives on how you set up your binds, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Maybe it'll give me some good ideas. So yeah, hopefully this helped a few people out there. I mainly made this for the people that requested it. So yeah, it's not for everybody, but if you made it this far in the video, hopefully it helped you out. And yeah, see you in the next video, guys.